Hey everyone, I'm Jake the Ashen Hollow. Udix Goon-dyr, Champion Goon-dyr. Both the same person, obviously, so let's drop the different titles and just call him Goon-dyr for the sake of this video. We first find Goon-dyr in the game kneeled outside of Firelink Shrine, pierced by a coiled sword. A coiled sword which reads, "Sword missing from the shrine bonfire, cannot be equipped as a weapon, thrust into the shrine bonfire to restore its power and enable travel between bonfires." The sword is only bequeathed to chosen Ash and judged by the Udix, who awaits the arrival of Ash as a scabbard. A scabbard is also known as a sheath, in case there were any confusion about that word. And as we can see, Goon-dyr certainly was a sheath for this coiled sword. A question we could ask is why? Why is he the sheath for this sword? Well, we have a bit of an answer. The sword we know is to be given to a chosen Ash as judged by the Udix. So perhaps the answer to why is so that he could simply preside over the unkindled and judge their worthiness to be chosen. That seems logical to me. It is similar to the question from Dark Souls 1 about the Asylum Demon, whether you were the chosen undead because you defeated him, or you defeated him because you were chosen. I think it is the same principle here. Either way, it seems the two purposes of Goon-dyr we find here is to 1, be a scabbard, and 2, be a judge. Simple enough, I suppose. But this isn't the last we've seen of Goon-dyr. No, we will see him once more in the untended graves. While in Lothric, we can travel through the consumed king's garden to fight the former king-turned-dragon Osiros. Osiros isn't too important to the story right now, so we'll just go on without him. What is important is that after defeating him, we can walk beyond his boss room and find an illusory wall that leads us to the untended graves, which also makes me believe that it is a part of Lothric, which I'll point out why I think that is important later. The untended graves might just be the most curious area in the game. We find ourselves exactly where we started this game, except it is darker, much darker. Are we somehow in the future, the past, or some sort of alternate dimension of present time? That is the million-dollar question here. There seems to be evidence for each of these answers, but I'll tell you what I think. I believe it to be the past. We stumbled upon a Goon-dyr's boss room again, and we fight a much more fierce Goon-dyr this time, and a Goon-dyr who is also not tainted by the pus of man. He is also missing the iconic sword that should be thrust through him. Upon defeating this champion Goon-dyr, we can find a fragment of a coiled sword, just like the one we pulled from him in the beginning of the game, in the unlit bonfire where we inevitably place it in during our time. Is it the same sword? I think not. If we read Goon-dyr's helm, it says, "Ancient helm of a set of cast iron armor belonging to champion Goon-dyr, modeled after a former king. Goon-dyr, or the belated champion, was bested by an unknown warrior. He then became sheathed to a coiled sword in the hopes that someday the first flame would be linked once more." It is very commonly believed that this unknown warrior that it talks about is us, or the chosen Ash rather. But we did not have a coiled sword upon beating him, we merely find a fragment of one afterwards. My thought? After finding the fragment in the past, the royal family restores the sword and places it in its appropriate scabbard. Whoa, what? The royal family? Yep. Just keep that thought close and I'll explain it shortly. But let me continue explaining first why I think our experience in the untended graves is in the past. Upon defeating champion Goon-dyr, we also receive his soul. Also note that we did not receive a soul from our first encounter with Goon-dyr, which I believe is evidence that points towards this being the past. And if we read his soul, it says, "Once a champion came late to the festivities and was greeted by a shrine without fire and a bell that would not toll." So champion Gundyr, who we fight in the untended graves, is meant to be labeled as someone who has arrived late, which again I think points us to the past. We first encounter him with a sword through him, presumably being stuck there. I don't think he could arrive there later already being the scabbard. That wouldn't make too much sense to me. We can also use his soul to create items, his halberd and a ring. Let's read his halberd first, which says, "Halberd of Gundyr the champion, received when he was charged with his duty. This old cast-iron halberd has the power to break poise and is said to never crumble, seeming to suggest that Gundyr was fated to eternal service from the beginning." That is a bit curious to me. It seems whomever sent him on this journey knew from the start what would become of Gundyr. What was his quest, though? That's a brief rabbit trail we should follow. The most common theory is that Gundyr had intended to meet with his firekeeper and link the flame. Let's see how we can come to this conclusion. We know that in his prime he was called Champion Gundyr, and if we read the Estus ring, which we find on a corpse in a grave full of dead firekeepers, it says, "This ring was entrusted to a certain firekeeper, but in the end she never met her champion, and the ensuing tragic farce became a favorite tale of the masses." With all we've learned about Gundyr's tale so far, he certainly seems to fit the bill. Certainly a tragedy, and it will only get sadder still. So Gundyr and his heroic quest to link the flame were in vain. So let's read the description for the prisoner's chain, which is the ring we receive from Gundyr's soul. It says, "A portion of a steel chain used to restrain Gundyr. A prisoner is one who has staked everything on a belief, a proclivity most apparent in the greatest of champions." A prisoner is one who has staked everything on a belief. What was that belief? The belief in the continuation of linking the flame? Seems likely that that is the belief, but whose belief is that? Remember when I mentioned the royal family? Their belief is all about linking the fire, about creating a worthy heir to link the fire, so much so that it has cursed their youngest son, who in transit cursed his older brother Lorien. It really seems as though Gundyr truly believed in his quest, truly believed he would link the fire and save the world. Well, in a manner of speaking. It also truly seems he was betrayed. He never knew he would be nothing but a scabbard to judge over the enkindled ash. That is why he is labeled a prisoner in the ring's description, why he was bound in chains. He staked everything on his belief. But why? I believe the royal family got to a point where they knew that the heirs they were creating through birthright wasn't enough for this world, especially after Prince Lothric turned his back on linking the flame. I believe their hopes turned to a chosen ash to do the deed, and needed Gundyr to play his part in seeing it to fruition. In fact, I think Gundyr is just another royal child playing his part in the cursed journey of linking the flame. Why is that? Well, we know that the untended graves has its ties to Lothric and the royal family. We know it's right beside where we fight the former king, and we can also find two references to the queen. One is the hidden blessing, which says, "There is a grave in Lothric that sees no visitors, a dark place where rootless warriors rest. The queen of Lothric alone cared to wish the poor souls good fortune." Yep, sounds like untended graves to me. Next is the Ashen Estus ring, which we find in the untended graves, which says, "Once a treasure brought before Lothric's queen, she had it enshrined in the cemetery of untended graves, so that one day an unkindled might profit from its use." So it seems very likely that the royal family had a hand in directing the chosen ash upon their quest to hopefully link the flame. Much like in Dark Souls 1, the royal family and illusions of a royal family helped guide the chosen undead on his quest to link the flame. Since it is also very likely that the Queen of Lothric is actually Guinevere, see my video on Rosaria to get the scoop there, then this is all just a continuation of Lord Gwyn's tradition of keeping the Age of Fire alive no matter the cost. But how does all this mean Gundyr is a member of the royal family, and my guess says perhaps a son of Guinevere? Though I couldn't tell you which one, it is known they had many children, but referencing Gundyr's helm again, it is said it is modeled after a former king. Who is the only former king we know? Yeah, Osiris, former king of Lothric. Also, let's reference the size of every member of the royal family of Dark Souls we've known throughout the series. Gwendolyn was larger than a human, the nameless king, or firstborn of Gwyn rather. The illusion of Guinevere was large, but it was just an illusion, though the couch she rested on was just the right size for her, plus all of the large beds we find in Anor Londo. I would assume that it's safe to say that the illusion was meant to appear identical to her. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Osiros was pretty big, though that could have just been the whole dragon thing, but I don't think it would be too likely to only be a side effect of becoming a dragon alone. Though none of the royal family or old gods, whatever you would like to refer them as, are as big as giants. They are certainly very apparently larger than humans, but not as large as giants. Looking at Gundyr, he is certainly larger than a human, but not nearly as large as a giant. I don't think that plus his modeling after a former king are coincidence. Dark Souls 3 seems to have a theme of sons mimicking the looks of their father. See the Nameless King, for example. I would also like to point out that the coiled sword shares the same properties of the Lord Vessel from Dark Souls 1, both gifts from the royal family that allow us to travel between bonfires. Could just be a gameplay consideration, just thought that to be a curious point. So to sum up my theory, Gundyr set upon his quest to link the flame, only to be late and greeted by a fireless shrine and a bell that would not toll. He was bested by the Chosen Ash before he was the Chosen Ash, and was betrayed by his family and made a scabbard for the sword only befitting a Chosen Ash, who the royal family believes is the answer to save the Age of Fire. I really have no idea how to explain the whole time travel thing. I really don't. We fight him as Chosen Ash so that he can judge us in the future so that we can become actual Chosen Ash. I know it's weird. Perhaps it's something we'll learn later, just as we hope to learn the shenanigans with Brandon Stark, Hold the Door, and friends, and that whole time traveling fiasco. But I hope you enjoyed this story and theory about the tragedy of Gundyr. Poor guy, though. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, please consider giving this video a like, and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hash things out with you guys. I'll see you next time.